Welcome to another video with Madame Moi. Again, remember to pause, go back, review whenever you want to, or even change the speed settings to make this faster or slower depending upon whether this is your first time understanding possession or whether it's just review. Well, soyez bienvenue à présentation de possession. It does not mean that a ghost is going to come and get us. It's talking about whether we can say this is mine. In English, we have so many wonderful things to say that denote possession, like it belongs to someone, that someone has something. And this amazing thing that makes everything so easy, which is the apostrophe S, to say it's Bob's, it's mine, it's his. These wonderful things, but the apostrophe S is something that we don't have. But here's what we do have in French. Someone has something. Quelqu'un a quelque chose. So we're using the verb avoir, to have. Être à quelqu'un. Notice there's an accent on this A because it then means to. So it's to be to someone. Le truc de quelqu'un, which is, I feel like it's the hardest one for us because the thing of someone. Possessive adjectives, you're going to see the most. And so we're going to concentrate the most on these because you'll probably be tested on them shortly. But remember, if you're not being tested on them and they're a little difficult for you to recall, go ahead and try one of the others. At another point, you'll probably learn about possessive pronouns. I will include those on the end if you're curious. So again, I have to repeat over and over again, apostrophe S does not work in French. It doesn't exist. We have all these other options, but apostrophe S doesn't work. So please stop using it. As a French teacher, it just makes you go. So quelqu'un a quelque chose, again, we're using the verb avoir. We have some examples of, for example, Bob a des hamburgers. Parce que quelqu'un a quelque chose. J'ai des hamburgers. I have these hamburgers. Other one is c'est à quelqu'un. So c'est à lui. Notice I have to use lui, him, because we fill this in with a possessive, or with a pronoun of some sort. So we could say c'est à moi, which you'll hear kids say all the time, or c'est à lui. Any of these pronouns, c'est à toi, you, à lui, him, à elle, her, nous, us, à vous, y'all, à eux, to them, it's theirs, et c'est à elle, it's theirs, and those are all females. So for example, les stylos sont à elle, notice because there's two, sont à elle, but le stylo est à elle, is hers. Quelqu'un, so basically you're just putting à and then quelqu'un, so c'est super facile. Le truc de quelqu'un, c'est plus difficile because we don't often think of the thing of so-and-so, but it is les hamburgers de Bob. Well, let's look at some more nerdy examples because it is a little bit more difficult. So, l'agneau de Sauron. Can you tell I'm waving my nerd flag? La cicatrice d'Harry. L'ordinateur de Steve Jobs. Ou la pomme de Steve Jobs. Now, the most important thing about possession that you're going to hear and see, because it's the most often used, are possessive adjectives. A lot of times they replace that article, the or because you don't need to say the, my, blah, blah. You just say my, blah, blah, blah. And they look easy to do. It looks like, oh man, I got this. My, your, his, hers, boom, done. But that's only step one, is figuring out who owns it. Step two is then figuring out, is the object masculine? Not me, not who owns it. Is that object masculine, feminine, or plural? And the fun thing is normally when you learn possessive adjectives, you're talking about family. And you know, maman, she's a female, she'll always be a female. And that's a little easier for us to say, okay, my mom, ma mère. And if you make a mistake and you put mon père, like say you're a guy and you think, oh yeah, I'm a guy, it's my mom, I'm going to put mon, it means your mom is a dude. So be careful with that. Similarly, if you say ma père, you're saying that your father is feminine. It should be mon père, always, if you're a guy or a girl. Now, the thing is that's most difficult is once we transfer that possession to a thing, Americans and people who speak English don't understand that every noun has a gender. And even though we don't recognize that, okay, the pens are masculine. I mean, what about a pen is masculine? But it is. So we have to remember that because my pen, this pen is masculin, I have to say mon stylo, not ma stylo. And I used to have to put little mustaches on labels or eyelashes on things to try to recall which is masculine, which is feminine. And once I heard them enough, I understood. Now, the internet does say there's some tricks to recognizing whether something's masculine or feminine. They say all these endings tend to be feminine, and all these endings, or sorry, those masculine, these all tend to be feminine. But in general, they say, well, feminine nouns, the majority, end in E or ION, except words ending in aj or ed or e or ism. Masculine nouns end in everything else. But let's see if that actually works. Just for beginning vocabulary lists, they tend to be things like un livre. Well, that ends in an E. It should be feminine, but it's masculine. Bureau, anything ends in EAU, you're generally masculine. That one's a good one, except for water and skin, which is poindle. That one also ends in an E. That's masculine. So maybe that rule that we learned before about the endings ending in E or ION tend to be feminine. And then only memorizing the ones that don't follow that rule will be helpful. Or maybe to memorize the masculine, feminine, you want to label everything like I did with eyelashes and mustaches. Whatever you do, it will be helpful when using articles and possessive adjectives, because every normal noun does need an article that, or a possessive, something to replace that. So you will need to know the gender of each of these nouns. So then how does that affect us using possessive? So for example, son ordinateur. Ordinateur is masculine. So this is Steve Jobs' computer and it's masculine, whether or not he is. It will always be son ordinateur. Whereas pomme, c'est féminin. So it's Steve Jobs' apple, but it has to be sa pomme because the apple itself is feminine. And then we see things like sa carte. Carte map is always feminine. So when I say sa carte, I don't know whose carte or map this is. It could be any of theirs because it's the map that's feminine and his, hers just could be his or hers. So if I wanted to say their map, then it would have to be leur map. Their, like it belongs to all three of them. Okay. Sa plume et son stylo. Again, we wouldn't know who we're talking about because it's only one of theirs. And it's feminine because plume is féminin or stylo is masculin. But sa chaise, we don't know whose chair, we just know his or her chair. Son livre, son épée, again, it could be his or hers. The livre itself is masculine. Now, épée is féminin because it's a sword, but it starts with a vowel sound. And words that start with a vowel sound, we don't want sa épée, two vowel sounds next to each other. That sounds funny. So we're going to say son épée. Son épée. But so who is it? Is it masculine? Is it feminine? Is it plural? Those can be very difficult. And with mom and dad, c'est plus facile. But learning to memorize like mot de passe masculin, or things like classe, c'est féminin, course, c'est masculin, devoir, c'est toujours pluriel ou masculin, ou votre, luckily with votre and notre, masculine and feminine are just votre or notre. There's not a difference. It's just plural that we need, which is nice. And I think the same thing for leur, oui. Leur, you just add an S for plural, which means there. So let's summarize. So we can either say quelqu'un a quelque chose, être à quelqu'un, le truc de quelqu'un, but possessive adjectives are what we're going to see the most. And we have to remember step one is figuring out who owns it, and step two is figuring out is that object or the thing that is possessed, is that masculine, feminine, or plural? If you want a couple more examples, I'll give you a few using all three of these. So tu as une histoire, à toi, yours, à l'histoire de toi. All of those are saying this is yours and ton histoire. Très bien. If you have questions, laisse-moi savoir. But in general, we love this kind of thing in a foreign language because it does make us do mental gymnastics. It makes our brain think out of the box. And this is why colleges require foreign language. Possessive pronouns, I promised I would talk about those for just a bit. To say it's mine, le mien. And again, we have masculine, feminine, plural, and plural, feminine. So super fun. Le tien, le sien, le nôtre, le vôtre, le leur. Again, that's a little bit more advanced and they're not used as often as possessive adjectives. But again, si vous avez des questions, laisse-moi savoir.